Good morning on this Friday in the 26th week in Ordinary Time. Wow, this month of October, so many liturgical feasts. Already this week we have celebrated Saint Therese on October 1st, the Feast of the Guardian Angels on October 2nd, Saint Faustina yesterday, October the 5th. Tomorrow, Our Lady of the Rosary, excuse me. And today, Saint Bruno. Not too many people know a lot about Saint Bruno, but I thought that his introspection on silence was something that we would reflect on today. I had saved an article that I read about a movie titled Into Great Silence. It was a movie directed by Philip Groening back in 2005, and it portrays the daily life of the Carthusian monks in their monastery in France. This was the place where Saint Bruno went to with a few of his companions to live an ascetic form of religious life among very steep rocks and snow-covered mountains. It still remains a vibrant community around our world today. I believe it's about 350 some religious commit their lives to this beautiful monastic way of life. But Father Billy Swann wrote an article about his experience when he went to see the film Into Great Silence. Father Swann is a priest in the Diocese of Ferns in Ireland. He has studied and taught many years at seminary. He studied in Rome, and I loved his reflection, so I tucked it away in a book for a good moment. Father says, I recall a friend of mine inviting me to see Into Great Silence with the warning that the movie was over 2.5 hours long, with only about 5 minutes of dialogue. The remainder of the film was in silence, and I remember wondering how much such a film could possibly be a commercial success. A typical movie director is looking for a great storyline and plot with lots of noise and action, so I was curious about this film. So I went. The theater was packed and there was an atmosphere of awe over the full 2.5 hours that we were there. No one left early. My initial fears of boredom were soon replaced by a realization that the unhurried pace of life lived by these men of God was challenging my very understanding of time as dominated by activities and deadlines. The more the film progressed, the more it drew us into the beauty and simplicity of the life led by the monks. The witness of the elderly and vulnerable monks only added to the sense of enchantment, captured by a profoundly human and moving film. The triumph of this movie is that it tells us, despite our fear of silence, we thirst for it. To face oneself in stillness is an essential exercise of knowing our true selves and knowing God. Knowing ourselves. We have to face ourselves once we've stopped running from ourselves. The task of getting in touch with our true selves is one that is not new. It was one that St. Augustine embraced after years of searching for happiness in futile places outside of himself. For Augustine, this inner journey was not an end in itself, but a prelude to giving himself away in self-sacrificing love. St. Augustine writes, first come back to yourself from the things outside you, and then give yourself back to the one who made you. This process of coming back to one's true self can only be done in silence and prayer. From the witness of Augustine, we are called home from the noise that is around us to the joys that are silent. Why do we rush about looking for God who is here at home with us, if all we want is to be with him? This can be our experience too when we shed our fear of solitude and silence. We face up to the things we have been fleeing from for a long time our sinfulness, our wounds, our loneliness, our incompleteness. Thomas Merton said, "It is the silence of the world that is real. Our noise, our busyness, our purposes, and all our fatuous statements about our purposes, our business, and our noise, these are just an illusion. Silence puts us in touch with our dignity as God's beloved and the freedom to rejoice in the goodness and blessedness in the created world around us." Into the Great Silence succeeded because it took us by the hand. It gently led us back into silence that is so undervalued and unsought in our culture. It taught us not to be afraid of silence, nor to run away from it. We discover that the silence embraced by Saint Bruno, lived by these monks, becomes not a burden, but the space in which we can know ourselves more deeply and know God better. On this feast day of Saint Bruno, we give thanks to God and the Carthusians for teaching us not to flee from solitude and the sound of silence, for it is in silence that we encounter both our misery and God's mercy, our blessedness and God's intimate union with us. There we find the graceful silence lived by the monks, the silence and stillness they invite us to cherish and cultivate every day. I challenge you to find some moments this week to stop into church and visit our Lord in the tabernacle. Come to adoration. Come to a holy hour. Just be with the Lord in silence. Leave your books at home, all of those things that we use to take up our space, and just sit with the Lord, even if it's for just 10 minutes. You will be renewed. You will feel how close He is to you. He's offering you His hand. He's offering you His love. Have a wonderful week.